Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diarist podcast that's showing the human stories behind indie game development. Speaking to you today is your loyal Indie Diarist and host, Anthony L. Wolf, writer, narrative designer, and senior content manager in social media. This episode is a very special one, and forgive my voice, I have a bit of a cold today, because I'm speaking to a lovely solo developer from Israel. His name is Peleg Harel, and he's working on a beautiful puzzle game called Exodus, inspired by the events of the Bible and the Exodus, indeed. So, before going any further into the episode, I want to shout out to my amazing Patreons who are, at the time of recording this, Angelisa, Fishbump Dev, Zucchini, Finoko, and Peleg himself, who subscribed right after being hosted on the show. Really, man, I appreciate you so much, and I'm so proud to have given you a little platform to talk about your story and your game, especially in these times. I hope it helps. But yeah, so, without further ado, let's get straight into the episode with Indie Diary number 26, Peleg Harel. Alright, hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diarist podcast, a show on the human stories behind indie game development. And today with me is a very, very special guest, someone that I've connected with over Twitter, or X, depending on how you want to call it now, because I was very much intrigued in the game that he was sharing in my Wishes Wednesdays and such, and then over time we just connected, tried the demo, and all of that, but now we're finally here. So, over to you, Peleg. Tell us a bit about yourself. What do you do, where you're based, that kind of stuff.
Okay, hi Anthony, first of all, thanks very much for having me here. I'm Peleg, I live in Israel. My day job is I'm a computer vision engineer at Snap, and on my free time I'm creating the game Exodus, for which I am creating a game engine from scratch.
Perfect. Yeah. So, well, Peleg, you've listened to my previous episodes, and you know that I like to open these with an icebreaker question. But actually, after speaking to a friend, I've decided to change this question a little bit, so this will be new to you. If you could step into any game's world for a day, which one would it be and why?
Okay, so when I was a child, my favorite game in the whole world was Rayman 2, if you're familiar. It has this colorful, very intriguing world with like robotic and fantasy mixed together, kind of this fantasy world, and every couple of years I still like to play this game, see if it's gotten old, and it really didn't. It's still amazing. So just experiencing this world is going to be my answer.
Wow, yeah, Rayman 2. Yeah, that's... I remember Rayman 2. I played it a lot, and I saw my uncle play it too on PC, and then I played it on PS1. Just the atmosphere is amazing. The music is beautiful, just very evocative. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, yeah, you remember you mentioned you mentioned playing Rayman 2 as a child and back in your childhood. So yeah, think back to your childhood. What's your earliest gaming-related memory?
Yeah, I think it's like quite a coincidence. I think it's probably Rayman 1.
All right, okay.
Which was kind of for a PC of a friend, which I used to sit around at. So, yeah, also a very fantastic game, really left an impression of me.
Yeah, Rayman 1 was very colorful. I remember that too. Very difficult too.
Insane difficult. Like,
insanely
not suiting this the settings. Yeah.
Exactly. So I can see that you enjoyed Rayman a lot and that you liked platforms and such. Exodus isn't exactly a platform. It's more like a puzzle game. So, but do you still think that like the games that you played as a child have had an influence on what you're doing now, in a way or another? Maybe you were playing a lot of puzzle games too back then.
So I do have like many years of gaming experience during my life. I will say that there is one driving thing that I think I implemented in Exodus, that when I used to play game as a child, each time when there was this cool new feature or a gimmick that I was excited about, and then it turned out to just be kind of a visual gimmick and not really affecting the gameplay, it was really frustrating to me, even as a child. Like I think Half-Life, which was a great inspiration for kind of the world-changing mechanics, it has this physics puzzle, supposedly physics puzzles, and was pretty didn't really need this complicated gravity gun and physics engine, and this kind of motive, like I think some games introduced portals and it was just for scripted going through a door or something like that. So it was really important for me in this game that every mechanic and feature of the world has a really important effect.
It's a really interesting point that you make there. The fact that back at the time, I think when games were still experimenting with the language and whatnot, they were just putting a lot of like immersive and overcomplicated features in there that didn't really have necessarily a place in the gameplay. So it's a nice thing that you brought up there. And well, I'm curious to know then, when did you realize that you wanted to make those games and to do those things better? Was there like a specific aha moment for you?
Yeah, so it's kind of a bit of a longer story. Okay, so...
Fine, yeah, I'm here. I've got all day.
Of course, when I was a child, I wanted to make games. I think a lot of kids do. But I kind of grew out of it as I got older, got more regular computer science career. But it was this thing in the back of my mind that kind of disturbed me over time, because as a software engineer, you can do interesting, complicated stuff, which I do get to do, but you don't usually get to create something that is a vision from your head, a complete something that you can call your own. It's very rarely done. So this was bugging me for a while, and like a couple of years ago, I met with a childhood friend, which I didn't meet for a long time, and we chatted about a lot of things. And one of them was like video games and creating video games, and he mentioned this fellow Jonathan Blow, which I think you're probably familiar with. He created Braid, very famous indie developer, and he said that these guys' talks are really worth listening to. So I saw some of his talks, and it really resonated with me. Mostly, like he said, what the message that he passed in these talks was that it is, if you want to do something big, something ambitious, you should go for it. This is one of his messages. Not only for yourself, but for society as a whole. Not enough people do it. And the second thing is that video games can be this very serious, ambitious thing worthwhile doing. And the reason is this video games can be this new form of communication that we just started exploring. So beyond a video game being one of the most complex things that you can do, it can only actually be something worthwhile for humanity as a whole. Maybe a bit pretentious, but
yeah, but I think he had a point there. And Jonathan Pope is just an amazing developer, so I have huge respect for him. And I think he had a point there. Like, games are this huge, complicated thing. They bring together a lot of different arts, visual arts, music, sound, creativity, game design, which is in itself an art, because it's just so incredible so difficult to grasp for many people. Even people spend their entire careers trying to understand game design, and even then they don't necessarily do it well. So it's a big thing, and I agree, it is worth doing. It is worthwhile to spend some time just learning how to do games and doing things that you really love and you really want to do, which I think is what you're doing now, which is really amazing. And how exactly did you become a game developer? Like, of course, you have a background in software engineering and such, so you know that kind of stuff. But how did you? Are you self-taught when it comes to like game design and engines? Did you do some specific course, something like that?
Yeah, so I do have this kind of small advantage because in my day job, as I said, I do computer vision. So graphics and computer vision have a lot of similar languages regarding how objects are represented in space and things like that. But of course, there was a lot of things you have to learn, and yeah, mostly self-taught in this case. I did I did try in the past to learn these subjects and failed a couple of them. What went different this time is that each time I sat around and learned a new concept, and so how can I take this minimal thing I have to learn and run with it? So I learned how to draw a box, 3D box on screen, and then then I did many boxes that were the terrain,
Perfect.
Yeah, just ran with it until I ran into a problem. It wasn't efficient, so I need to find another way. But this way you actually have much more progress, and you also, the things you learn are in context, so you can get much further.
I guess that's probably something like a transferable skill that comes from your day job, because iterating over things is probably something that is embedded into the way you do things. Like you learn something, then okay, let's start experimenting and doing it differently, so that you learn and then you perfect yourself while you do it. So yeah, that's a very interesting thing. So Exodus is probably the first game you will launch, I suppose. Is it the first one you ever developed, or was there something else?
Of course, there was, like, as a kid, I did many small experiments, but I don't think anything that constitutes as a complete game. No, this is, I think, the first game I'm developing.
Perfect. And during your development of Exodus so far, has there been like a particular challenge that left a mark on you? Something that like other developers can find useful? Something that you've learned?
Game design is by far, I think, the hardest challenge. So, first of all, coming up with new mechanics, I think this game might be even more challenging because it's pretty unique out there. It's so very strange. So you have to come up with mechanics that are nowhere else. So.
Oh, by the way, just to jump in, I love the ripple mechanics. Like just the fact that you can lift some sand and pinch it, and then you have ripples going across, and then you have to play around with those and time things correctly. I mean, I think it's brilliant. But go on.
Yeah, that actually was the first thing in the game. It was what the entire game is based on. Before I thought about the lore or everything else, was that you can pull the ground and have this ripple effect.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
So, for instance, how to come up with new mechanics in the game is that what really helps me is that you're just familiar with what's in the game very much, and if you write your own engine, you're more familiar with how things work, and then play with it a bunch. Just sit around and muck around with things, and then ideas come sometimes. Yes, so just experiment with your stuff until you come up with new ideas, I think, is the main thing I learned regarding game design.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's very valuable, and I think it's come. I mean, the moment to talk about your current game has come, because we've been just sprinkling a little bit of knowledge and little facts here and there. But Exodus, I mean, who better to explain Exodus than its creator? So, what is Exodus, and what is it about?
Okay, so first of all, in Exodus, you play as God. In the story of Exodus, kind of, and your goal is to deliver the Hebrews and avoid getting killed by the Egyptians. So the first thing to say about Exodus is the controls. It's defining quality. So you literally play as the hand of God. You play as a disembodied hand. The controls are very simple. This was one of the things that was important to me to do. Is that you just move the hand with the mouse, move the hand along the plane, and you can grab and pull things if you press the mouse button, and that's it. That's the controls. But complexity does come from the way things interact when you try and pull them. For instance, if you grab the water and push them down, you get this tearing of the water that is from the story of Exodus. And if you grab, as you mentioned, if you grab the sand and you pull it, you get this wave ripple effect. And if you grab a human, you just pick them up and can drop them. And many other things that are in further levels in the game. So what happens with these mechanics is that you have to combine them together in order to solve puzzles, which I tried very much not to repeat myself. The puzzles, each new puzzle was important to me, that it will have a new idea, a unique idea of the puzzle that you figure out. And most of the game is figuring out how does these different environment interactions combine in order to solve the puzzle.
Yeah, but what I loved about the demo is that no two levels were the same. Like, there was always something new, or some new idea, or some very creative iteration of an existing idea, like all the spikes and how they work, or just the fact that even just the simple thing of the colored waves, like when you pinch the sand and then you hit maybe some colored walls and such, and then you start playing around with colors and combining them. I thought that was very clever. I thought there was a lot of cleverness in the game in general. So I think that idea of no two puzzles have to be the same, I think you convey that very well in there. But now, talking about Exodus itself, and like you mentioned, the lore and such, of course, there's a clear religious undertone to it. What inspired you to work on Exodus in the first place?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, as I said, the game mechanics, working on the game mechanics of you being able to manipulate the environment was the first thing I thought about. Like, as soon as I started to, I wanted to make a game, I started like to think about game ideas, and this is the one I came up with. First, I thought maybe even do it in a first-person shooter kind of a way, where you manipulate the environment, and then later it developed into this top-down version. The lore came only like when I was well into development. Me and my girlfriend were on a vacation in London, and we saw the Prince of Egypt musical. So I just kind of clicked together as a very fitting theme. When actually what happens there is that the water is being manipulated in real time in this interesting way. So this really fits the game.
Oh, that's a really nice story. Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, you can tell friends, oh yeah, no, I was watching a musical and I got the idea for Exodus. Yeah, no, beautiful stuff. And do you have a release date in mind for the game that my listeners can look forward to?
Yes, I plan to release the game in early 2024.
Perfect, yeah, and I think you're on the right track there, because you've done some playtesting rounds already and such, and the game was, already working pretty well there, so I think you're just iterating, creating new puzzles by now and such. This is a bit of a tricky question for some, but if you could go back, is there one thing that you would change? Is there anything that you would change about the development of your game?
So hindsight is always 2020. I really like the lore and how it fits the game, but I would maybe try to experiment with multiple lores. I think a couple of guests on your show already mentioned marketing is really, really hard. So when you, like, the mechanics are set in stone for me, really important for me to have these interesting mechanics, but like the theme and lore, I would experiment more to find what resonates with people.
Well, I think you can still find, regardless of what the lore of the game is, I think you can still find people who are very much interested in the genre, and they find it fun. Like, it reminds me a lot of from Dust, for example. It was from Ubisoft in the PS3 era, I believe. The kind of physics element, it was there too, and it was really interesting, although completely different, of course. But there was tribal lore to it, but I personally didn't really care about it. Or, well, it was fascinating, but, the mechanics were so compelling and gripping that I just had a lot of fun with it. And I think it could be the same for your game. So, yeah. And now for my favorite question out of anything that I ever ask anybody. Why are you a game developer? What is it that drives you forward?
I think I kind of... previous answers that. So mostly that of creating something meaningful, I think, is the most driving effect for me.
Yeah, it's always nice to hear it spelled out like that. So that's amazing. But do you ever of course, you mentioned you have a girlfriend, and she inspired you. Well, watching that musical together inspired you to work on Exodus. But do you ever feel discouraged or even lonely as an indie game developer? And if you do, how do you cope with that?
Yeah, so kind of you do a lot of stuff and not always have someone to share it to. So I try to like every little thing I do, I chase around the people who are closest to me and see and show them, look, I did that effect, this cool graphics effect, this other thing. So I think this is what on the day-to-day keeps me motivated.
Yeah, that's a good way to cope with that feeling of, the imposter syndrome, which sometimes comes up, and for every single creative, I think. Okay, so we're approaching the end. So here's one last question from me. If you had unlimited budget and time, what game would you create?
So I already started thinking about what my next project might be. I have a couple of ideas. So one of them was kind of a competitive multiplayer game, which I kind of discarded immediately because I understand a multiplayer game, if you make it, it's just you have to be financially viable because a single player game, even if you like get only 10 players, they will have a good time. But the multiplayer game, you have to have these players or the game won't succeed, then you have to have the servers and everything. So yeah, if I had unlimited budget and time, I would do some kind of interesting multiplayer game, I think.
Perfect. Yeah, and it's not uncommon. A lot of people do say that. I believe the allure of making massive multiplayer games is huge, especially because it means a lot of people would play your game and they would play it together. So it's not only a nice financially secure if it reaches success, but also it's something that a lot of people will enjoy. So I think a lot of developers and gamers aspire to do that. Well, what can I say? It's been a beautiful chat. It's been beautiful finally catching up with you, Peleg. I'm sure Exodus will turn out great. As a last thing from you, where can other people find you? And if they do, what is the best way to support you?
Yes, so people can find me on Twitter, now X or whatever. It's Exodus P Game, and on Steam. Best way to support Exodus is wishlist it, and I would appreciate people trying the demo. Yeah.
Perfect. And of course, I will put all of these links in the description so people can check you out. But yeah, what can I say? Thank you so much for your time, Peleg. It's been beautiful chatting, as I mentioned. And yeah, best of luck with Exodus. I'm sure it will turn out great.
Thank you very much.
And that's a wrap on another episode of the Indie Diarist podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. And thank you to Peleg for your time and for being such a lovely guest. It's been a short and sweet talk, but I think your passion for the game that you're creating and for games in general really does come through. So I loved having you on the show. And of course, this makes it even more special because now you're one of the supporters of the show. So thank you for that one as well. I'm sure we will do something else in the future. I've got loads planned for 2024. So yeah, I look forward to reconnecting with you on that. But yeah, so if you guys enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show, leave a rating. Anything that you can do to help will actually make a big difference. Even just leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast will please the gods of the algorithm. So yeah, I would appreciate that very much. Don't forget that you can join the Indie Diarist Discord if you want by going to theindiediarist.com and clicking on the invite link. And that's also where you can find links to my Patreon, Ko-fi, and all of the other ways in which you can support me, including social media. Now, lastly, if you are an indie game developer yourself, and I'm sure you are, because a lot of my listeners are, please get in touch because I would love to tell your story to the world and to my affectionate listeners who are always hungry for new stories from the indie game development community. I'll speak to you next time.